Welcome to the show. On Career Conversations, I've always endeavored to bring top end achievers in their professional fields on this show. So today I have Mr. Indranil Chakraborty, and he is a dynamic marketing person of Jadavpur University, IIM Lucknow vintage, and then spent a remarkable 15 years, more or less 15 years in HUL, and then worked in TTSL, Mahindra Resorts, and now is in a full-fledged startup that teaches people how to use stories as a narrative for more effective communication. So welcome to the show, sir. It's a
Thank
honor
you
to
for
have a
having.
person of your stature. So, sir, just coming straight away to the question. So please tell us about your formative years. As in, what were your key takeaways from St Edmund School in Shillong? So typical convent, is it like value-based system or English-speaking skills which are above board or an outgoing personality? So these are the usual traits of someone who comes from missionary schools. So,
Yeah, we were very lucky that in the little small town that I was born and grew up, which is Shillong, we had perhaps at that time one of the best convent. As you're right, it does give you a huge amount of understanding and ability to speak good English. Unfortunately, across this country, including at St. Edmunds, no one teaches speaking. Yeah, and that's very funny because speaking is a science. Speaking is also an art, but there is a science, there is a structure to it. Back in the time of Aristotle and Plato, schools used to teach speaking. Yeah. Unfortunately, in this country and in many other parts of the world, they don't teach speaking. So the way you learn speaking is through the ear. You listen to people who speak well. You listen to people who have clean accent, and you pick that up. And so, absolutely right. To that extent, being educated at Irish Brothers School, we picked up the right accents, the right language structure, etc., all by the year. And yeah, it was a very nice school. I mean, we had 7 football fields, 2 basketball courts. So you were encouraged to go out and play, and that of course makes you make friends, etc. So yeah, of course, the school has had a lot of role to play. And indeed, the value systems as well. Values come not only from your parents, but from the school. And I still sort of resonate with the motto of St. Edmunds, and it was facta non verba, which means deeds, not words. Yeah. And so all that has remained with me.
so, sir, was engineering the plus followed by MBA the hot formula for success in the late 80s as much as it is today? So for your case, for example, Jadavpur University and IIM Lucknow happened back to back. So, and did you ever wonder that you would have like some work ex after engineering, then the MBA would have been more effective?
It is very easy to try and link up dots backwards, but I don't think it was anything like that. You have to remember that we grew up in a place and time when there was nothing called the internet. I came from a smaller city tucked away in the northeast. I didn't even know there was something called an MBA till my second year in engineering. Yeah. And the path that you followed was almost something like predestined. If you did well in science in school, then you took up science in college. And if you did well in science and maths in college, you then became either a doctor or an engineer. And if you did well and you wanted to be an engineer, you did well, you would become a computer science engineer. I mean, so I don't think at any point in time there was any method, if you like, to that. Once in engineering, I realized that while I loved coding and I loved software, I just didn't like hardware. And I couldn't see myself being sitting behind a computer for many, many hours. Though I did learn languages beyond what was taught in the college. In fact, I learned languages which I went and taught seniors as well. But when I got to know about what the MBA does and finally what kind of jobs MBA people get, I obviously tried to get into any of the IIMs. As far as your question is concerned, again, it wasn't something that I sat and thought, saying, okay, the best way to do an MBA is to get some work checks and then do the MBA. Theoretically, of course, you're right. If someone told me what is the best way to do that, I would say work for a few years, because then a lot of things that are taught at the MBA college, you get a perspective of what is being talked about, because a lot of case studies are about work and work environments, etc., which someone like me who had never worked, except for the 1 month of summer training, would have not got. But I don't think it was all that planned. It just happened one after the other as what was the sort of the set path in those days.
Right. Yeah. So actually it just happens. A lot of things in our life, there's no set. So then you spent like 15 years in HUL across various locations, Nepal, Kolkata, Delhi, Mumbai. And I'm sure it would have been a fascinating journey. But typically, like, is everyone cut out for a career in marketing? And what are the typical challenges? It sounds very glamorous: FMCG, branding, supply chain, distribution. So what would be your take on the memories that you gathered from those 15 years? Is it suitable for everyone to be? Is it as glamorous as it sounds?
I don't know what the glamour is. Of course, I understand that when you are a brand manager and you sort of work with an agency and put out an ad, and that ad is seen by everyone across the country, from your cousins to your friends, there seems to be some glamour. No, I think what HUL did, and I think HUL still does, it's probably the best finishing school, yeah, for anyone in sales and marketing. The first few years is while you are given a very responsible job, you're given a lot of training, you're given a lot of guidance, you're given a lot of mentoring, and I think that's what creates foundations. And one of the things which I think was brilliant those days in HUL, I'm not sure how much they follow it today, is that you reached your marketing role only after doing 3 to 4 years in sales. And that is hard work. You're traveling 3 to 4 days a week. You're traveling into the interiors of the country. You see what it takes for those brands to be available, what supply chain means, etc. And it's only when you do that that your appreciation as a brand manager of what you ask your sales guys to do increases. So any one thing you should look for, at least in the first few years. Yeah, glamour gets you nowhere. What you need to look for is, what is it that you want to learn? And I know that some of these things may sound counterintuitive, but and maybe it's difficult to before getting into a job to be sure of this. But if people had a choice, I would say find out who's going to be your boss. Who are the kind of mentors you will have? That is far more important than which company you work for. Yeah, and which company you work for is far more important than what glamour is associated with it, what perks come with it, because those are your formative years. It's if there's a company and mentor that invests in you, that's the most important thing that you can have.
So one question, but I always get intrigued. People are going to use soaps and shampoos. They are going to use washing detergents. You've got a set distribution pattern in terms of the dealers, distributors. Then what is the need of hiring these top paid executives from IIMs to drive those distributors to pick up more volumes? Means at the sales level, at the ASM and the.
Yeah, sorry, you need to repeat that entire question. You had frozen in the middle.
So what I'm saying is that, sir, like there are set brands like a Rin and a Lux. People are going to have a bath. They're going to wash their clothes. You've got a set dealer distributor network. In spite of that, what value does a top end paid graduate from like an IIM would add and push them to sell more? Or is it just like a fascination that they have for IIM people? And
No. So first, let's talk about what you said, that everyone is going to buy a shampoo, and so of course, yes, when you're selling essentials, people will buy, but that doesn't mean they'll buy your brand, yeah, unless yours is the only brand in the country. And as markets grow, they will be competitors, both local and international, that will come in. And so unless any brand and brand manager is on the top of their game at all points in time, there isn't any way that you'll survive in the long run. And the same thing with supply chain. Yeah, it's not that everything is constant. You do have change in distributors. You do need to expand. You need to go to smaller and smaller towns. I can only answer from my point of view. When I was senior enough in recruiting, why would I recruit an MBA, and that to an engineer MBA? I think not because what engineering or MBA taught. I think there's nothing that MBA or engineering taught that essentially made me a better manager or makes a person a better manager. But what I think the system in India does, it gives you a huge filter. Yeah. So anyone who's gotten through a exam and got into a good engineering college obviously has this basic amount of IQ, but also is obviously perseverant. Yeah, is hardworking, is interested in his future. All great traits that you'd want in people in your team.
Now, sir,
Yeah, sure.
after having spent 15 years in HUL, then you started off with this Build a Bear workshop in your next career stint. So that's quite interesting. One, you would have a big designation to leave and become entrepreneurial. And then what was this 2 years about, Build a Bear workshop?
Okay, so correction. I was not technically an entrepreneur. Yeah. So why did I quit Levers when I was a global brand director and join Build a Bear workshop? No, not because I was unhappy at Levers, not because I was not doing well, but in fact, the interview that I went for. So let me first maybe backtrack and explain what is Build a Bear. So Build a Bear workshop is actually an American retail chain. Yeah. It's like retail entertainment. Build a Bear workshop stores are where children can come and create their own teddy bears, and dress them up and take them home. And there was the Murjani group, which had in that time got a lot of these brands as a franchisee. Yeah, and they were looking to have people who would actually set up the whole company. So to that extent, entrepreneurial. Yeah, but not with your own money or your own risk. What got me interested was as I was saying, not because I was unhappy with. In fact, I wasn't even. I was reluctant to even go for that interview. It's just that the person who was headhunting was known to me, and she kept insisting that the Murjanis had met 50 people, they hadn't liked anyone. I'm running out of candidates. Can you at least go and show your face, because I need to get my fees? And I went without even knowing what Build a Bear workshop was. I went, and as I understood what it was, I thought it was fascinating, because I don't think there is anything more powerful than co-creation. And here was something that you co-created. And my role in Unilever at that point in time required me to travel every week almost across the world. And so I took that opportunity to visit Build a Bear stores in London and places like that. And what I saw there sort of was amazing, about how happy people were leaving that store, how they kept talking about the store experiences, even after they were like 1 kilometer away from the store. And that's what got me into Build a Bear. So we created that company from scratch. The Murjanis had a file which had an agreement with Build a Bear, and that's all. So I found an office space. I recruited the teams. I trained them. We started three stores. But we realized that it wasn't a franchisable brand, because a franchise works when the franchisee is not building the brand. Yeah. So if you're a franchisee of, let's say, Calvin Klein jeans, Calvin Klein jeans is known to everybody. Yeah. And let's say you're the Jaipur franchisee. All you have to do is find a place in Jaipur, find the people, and pay for the stock. The brand will sell because it is already promoted by the brand owner. Here, no one knew Build a Bear workshop. So we were actually building someone else's brand at franchisee cost structures. And after 2.5, 3 years, we realized that that's not going to work. And then, so we shut everything down. I placed everyone in the company in other organizations, and then moved on to join the Tatas.
So Interesting takeaway is that at a franchisee cost structure, you can't really build someone else's brand. That has its own limitations.
Yeah, because if you're building, so when you're building a brand, your initial years, your profitability will be very low. But
Yes.
you're doing that because it's an investment for the future. Now, when it is someone else's brand, why would you invest for the future? Because in the future, he or that company may not keep you as a franchisee in the first place. And why did the Build-A-Bear have a franchise in India? Because they weren't allowed, in fact, in that time to as single brand retail to come into this country. They had to have partners. So a lot of people ask me whether the concept was ahead of its time. No, I don't think so. I think the structure was ahead of its time, or incorrect, not ahead of its time, incorrect. So if I were to go back to Build-A-Bear, and I believe they've recently come back to India with a store in Bangalore with another partner. Of course, it's been 2006, 12 years later. What I would renegotiate would be that they would spend money to build the brand. And as a franchisee, what my responsibility would be to find the right space, to find the right talent, and run it professionally and efficiently. And they should spend on the brand building because after all, it's their brand. And if that was the case, then your margins would justify itself.
So, sir, in the next avatar, you shifted to Tata Teleservices and then Mahindra Resorts. So, like marketing for a prepaid SIM, a postpaid mobile connection, and holiday experiences. How different was it as compared to a Lifebuoy, a Lakme, and a Breeze?
The Lifebuoy, Lakme, Breeze, and selling talk time, there's no difference. Yeah, because you're selling perishable products. Right? Like everyone needs a piece of soap, and the piece of soap finishes, and you have to buy another piece of soap, and you have a choice of buying a different piece of soap. And so the sales and distribution and marketing challenge is to keep people buying your soap, right? And people are not going to travel for kilometers to buy soaps. Yeah. So same thing happens with airtime, whether it's and most of India is prepaid, and in prepaid, someone has bought your SIM, has paid you some money, and that money will finish, and someone will have to top it up, right? And now, of course, you have everything from over-the-air top-ups, etc. Those days, top-ups had to happen physically, and so unless you are present at what Coke used to at some point in time call the arm's length of desire, as in my neighborhood kirana store or my panwala, if we didn't have, then I would not want to buy that brand because it's a daily or weekly consumption. I need to top it up. So in terms of both sales and marketing, in terms of distribution as well, there isn't much difference between selling talk time and selling soaps or shampoos. It is different when you're selling holidays because you're selling a far higher ticket price. You are selling a concept, yeah, and you don't have to be in every neighborhood. Yeah, you need to be able to find ways to get the consumer to come to wherever is the central location and sell them or sell them at their houses. Yeah, so it's a completely different. That is different ball game altogether.
In those days, digital marketing would also not have been there. So the channels
It
also
was
would have
there
been.
during Mahindra holidays. Lead generation through the internet, etc., had already
Just started.
started, and we were doing some of it, but it didn't contribute to, I think, more than 8-9% of sales.
Sir, now I have read about this extensively in your book, but then if you can share your experience with our viewers, as in how this transition to Storyworks happened, how you met those foreigners with that concept, what were the initial resistances in India, at least specifically, let's say, when making people to pay, and then how did the concept slowly gain currency in terms of this entire. So maybe you could give the viewers a background about what Storyworks is and all.
Yeah. So Storyworks is a company that helps organizations and leaders be more impactful and memorable in their communication using the power of stories, yeah, or story structures. To keep this thing short, I was in Mahindra Holidays trying to establish a new set of values. Yeah, and values, as you know, in any company are either single or double words, words like transparency, integrity, respect, or sustainability. And these are abstract words. And because they are abstract, it is very difficult to do two things. One is embed them. And two is to have everyone in the company understand that word similarly. Yeah. And I didn't know what was the best way to do it. And I tried what everyone else did, like workshops and posters and coffee mugs. And nothing like that ever worked. And I don't think ever works. And during that quest of understanding how do you get people to understand something abstract, but understand it same from the CEO to the janitor, everyone understands what respect means or what transparency means. In that quest is when I landed up on a blog of a person called Sean Callahan, who was the founder of a company called Anecdote in Australia, who had written a blog about how when you have to convert abstraction to concreteness, you can use stories. And I had no clue what that meant. So I got in touch and we started corresponding, and he tried explaining it to me. And then, like it has been all through my life, luck and serendipity always has been sort of the biggest contributors. And as luck would have it, Sean was coming to India, and I spent 2 days with him, and I understood what stories are all about in business. How do you collect them? How do you select them? How do you broadcast them? And once I learned how to do that, I came back and utilized that in Mahindra holidays, and I saw magic happen. Yeah, very quickly people were able to understand the difference between each of the values and understand in a concrete manner what each of those values meant. Yeah, and I was fascinated by the results this kind of communication was getting. It's again, like I said earlier, it's difficult. It's easy to look backwards and join the dots and say, this is why I did this. There were a lot of things that were happening. I wanted to get out of Bombay. I didn't know what I would do, and my wife and I wanted to move to Goa. There wasn't any big company that would sort of pay me a decent salary there. I had got extremely interested in storytelling. And all those things sort of, if you like, coincided at one point in time. And that's when I quit. And I went and approached Sean as to whether we would like to partner in India. And the journey on storytelling started. Yes, it was difficult in the first year or 2 years because people had no clue what business storytelling was about. As soon as the word storytelling came, they thought I was creating a new agency like Ogilvy or a JWT, people who make advertising. And I kept saying, no, I'm not talking about advertising. I'm talking about your leaders telling stories. And why should our leaders tell stories? We are in a serious business. But once we kept at it, not only did the work that we did pay dividend in terms of increasing awareness, etc., but across the world, the sort of understanding that life is getting, in terms of messaging, is getting more complex. The noise around messaging, as the number of messages that come at anyone is increasing. And on the other hand, people's attention span is decreasing. So you have a very dreadful combination. More complex messaging, like let's imagine, an IT person 20 years back would sell a mainframe. That's it. Yeah. So many transactions at this much cost, etc. Now he had to sell AI and machine learning and etc. and etc. Software as a service, everything in the cloud, blah blah. So you had far more complex messaging, right? Also, the person who's buying a product has many messaging coming to him, and attention spans are low. And people needed to find a way to cut through all that. And across the world, people started getting understanding that stories is a way to do that. And again, serendipity and luck. Yes, we put in a lot of hard work. Yes, we went and met a lot of, I think the first 2 years, I met more than 200 companies, but worked with probably about 5. Yeah. But all that work, plus the fact that the understanding about storytelling was growing together, then by the end of the second year we were up and running. Today we have more than 30 clients. We do consulting, we do training. We run more than close to 100 workshops, train more than 2,000 very, very senior people. We've used consulting as a way to get organizational messaging to stick. Yeah, and that's been a lovely journey.
Amazing. I mean, a concept which would have found very little recognition in the initial part. And as you said, people mistakenly thought that it was another ad agency. You brought this concept. So whenever I go to an airport, sir, I check on the stores whether Stories at Work is there, and it is actually there. So do people come back and thank you? Because, sometimes the vivid expression, which a story, which I also learned from your book, I mean, it's fascinating the way you can actually demonstrate an idea, or most importantly, amidst all the chaos that you were describing, still register in the minds of people. Stories are an amazing thing. So do people come back and thank you for this knowledge that
Of
you
course
give?
they do. And I'm extremely grateful. And that's not just the people we train, which is face to face. I've had, I don't know, I'm not going to say hundreds, but a lot of people who have written back and said, how it is helping them in whatever work they do. Some they are trainers, or they are, junior managers or senior people, and how suddenly people are understanding what they are saying. And yes, a lot of people have come and thanked on LinkedIn, through email, through our website, etc. I have been positively surprised as to how well the book has done. When I wrote the book, I wasn't even sure. Neither was Penguin Random House, who had approached me to write the book. Really, I don't think even they thought that it'll do so well. Within the first 3 months, it became a national bestseller. It's been more than a year, and like you said, yes, it's still available. I was in 2 airports in the last 2 days, and it was available in all the stores. It has also been selected for the Crossword Book Awards as the shortlist. And what I hope is that all the love and affection that people have shown gets translated into the votes on the Crossword Book Awards website, because the shortlist is done by Crossword, but the choice out of which book wins out of the 5 is based on popular votes. And I've also had people who are students come write to me saying, I found this book on my dad's table, and I was wondering why he's a senior person and what is he doing with stories. I started flipping the book, and I realized it just makes sense to me. And it does. I now take a sort of a half credit course at SV Jain, and people are seeing how it doesn't matter whether you're a student or a CEO. You can get more powerful in your communication using stories.
So one question which a lot of people feel, that now that you've seen both worlds, is job is better or entrepreneurship is better?
I don't know if I'm going to say a blanket statement. There are going to be a lot of people for whom a job is a much better place to be. Different people have different risk profiles. Different people have different ambitions. Different people have different sort of desires, and I don't think there is a sort of a yes no about whether people should become a employee or an entrepreneur. Um, what I would say is that, and this may be counterintuitive to the current generation, where the people who want to become entrepreneurs from college. I think if one gets an opportunity in the initial years to work in a large, successful, structured company, and as I said, with great mentors so if you have a great manager, I would, if I had to plan and chart a course for anyone, I would say, go and do work in a company, understand how business works, get a mentor in the company, your boss, etc., who will guide you. And once you've got all that, then think of whether you want to jump into your own. Because when you jump into your own from day one, who's going to mentor you? Yeah, who's going to tell you about what's right and what works and what doesn't? Now, I'm sure that a lot of people say, I don't want anyone to tell me, I'll do it my way. but that leads to a lot of reinventing the wheel and a lot of getting structures wrong. So perhaps even if you wanted to be an entrepreneur, doing a few years in a place where the training is robust, where mentors are great, would be a great idea.
And as a extension of this question, so what is your view on these, just college dropouts having concepts and VCs shelling out hundreds of millions of dollars after them? Is it like greater fool theory, which is there just chasing? Because none of those startups are making money.
So I guess time will tell. As you rightly said, they are not making money. But I think if someone has identified a difficulty that people face or need people have, which is not being fulfilled, and that person has come up with either a product or an idea that fulfills that need, at some point in time that will do well. I think what perhaps is happening, and maybe I'm old school, is people, many of them, not all of them, are building a company for an IPO rather than building a company for the consumers. Yeah. And to me, if you build the company for the consumers, that's the robustness of the company. Uh, and that's when your eye is not on whether the investor or the VC or the PE is giving you money. It's about whether the customer is giving you the money. Yeah. And when you create products and services where the customers will give you money, there will be profit in it. Yeah. And when there is profit in it, there will be investors. I know that, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg and what comes first, but I think keeping the focus on getting profitable, for me, and maybe I'm old school, as I said, is more important than getting a huge number of customers, which is what I see many of the startups trying to do. And why do you do that? Because you're trying to get valuation. Yeah. So time will tell whether the old school is right, which is get the customer in the center of your business, get profitability as the center of your business rather than how large your revenue it is. Uber hasn't yet made money, and to me that's stupid, because it's so many years that all they've been doing is getting more and more consumers. Why can't you sit and first get profitable in a country or a geography, and then find a way to keep being profitable? But that's my point of view. It doesn't have to be the right point of view.
Sir, a question which I might ask with your permission is that we just had the World Mental Health Day 2019, day before yesterday. So in your book also, you've mentioned that you had bipolar disorder in the midst of your HUL career, which kind of was a roadblock for your further upliftment. But then one of the good things that happened was that you emerged stronger out of that and you're doing well in your career. So there is a lot of stigma that surrounds mental health issues in India. So, sir, what was your experience with this? How did you overcome this? If you could just share some snippets from that.
So I was very lucky. Again, as I said, luck and serendipity has always had a huge role to play. I was lucky because the doctors had picked it up pretty fast as to the condition I had. My company was extremely supportive because, as you know, bipolar means that you go through a high and then you go through an extreme low. When you go through that high, of course, you're extremely productive, you're extremely creative. A lot of people say some of the best work of arts have happened when the artist has been in a bipolar high state, whether it's Michelangelo or one of my favorite painters. The guy on whom the book Lust for Life was written. Why can't I remember? Vincent van Gogh. Yeah, has done some of the best work when they were high. So that time people don't pick it up. They just think you are God's gift to mankind. But it's when you get into the downward trend is when you don't want to meet people, you want to be in bed. And as that downward trend happened, the company doctor requested me to go and meet a mental health specialist, who immediately picked up that this was the problem. And not only was, of course, the family very supportive, the company was. They gave me a job that was not stressful. They gave me a job where if I failed completely, it really wouldn't damage anything in the company. And they gave me that space to recover. And once I did, which took about a year, I was back on track and went on to be a regional brand director, a global brand director. You know, and those were, you know, as good as it you could get in marketing. And so, yes, there is a stigma, but awareness is growing. But there, a lot more has to change because, if someone comes and says, "I have a toothache," you say, "Go, show a dentist." If someone says, I have a very bad stomach ache," go to the doctor. And someone says, "I'm feeling very depressed." "Arey chal yaar, nothing will happen. Come, let's go out for a movie." Uh, that is as big a health condition as is a toothache and a stomach ache. And if it is picked up and instead of saying, "Come, don't be depressed, let's go for a movie," is replaced by, "You feeling depressed? Let's find out what is the cause of the depression." And many times, like it was in my case, it's a chemical imbalance in the head. And a chemical imbalance can be corrected with medicine by putting in chemicals into the head. Yeah. And so I think, yeah, as awareness grows, it will be people around the people who have mental illness, because when you're depressed, that's not the time when you can think clearly and say, "I need to go to a mental health specialist." It is people around you who should be aware that you seem to show a very different behavior, and instead of saying, "Cheer up, cheer up," actually know that an intervention is required. And it is, mental health issues are as much a health issue as cancer, as toothache, as fever, and is eminently treatable. And the good thing, large organizations like Levers was, there was no stigma attached to it. Yeah. And when I was up and running, no one said, "Should we trust him with a big brand? Should we trust him with a global brand? Should we trust him with global operations?" And they knew that I was now back. It's like if someone had a surgery and he was back, people are not going to say, "Oh, now he's become a different person." But again, yes, I guess there's luck contributes to a lot. And I was lucky to have that support and that encouragement at that point in time.
And sir, is it like counseling also helps along with the medicines, or is it case to case?
That's a long story that I really don't have time to get in
Yeah, yeah.
here. I am a big believer that counseling deals with cognitive mind. Our cognitive mind is just 6 to 7%,
Okay.
and so first, if there is a chemical issue, counseling can't help. Right? You need to correct that chemical issue. After the chemical issue is corrected, as the chemical issue gets corrected, yes, some amount of counseling can definitely work. But being able to look at alternate forms of healing, on working with people who are able to help you reach your subconscious mind. My wife works with the subconscious mind, and uh, she's able to work with people by getting into something called hypnotherapy, which is getting into your subconscious mind and helping you, because that's the 93% of your mind. If you can engage 93% of your mind, why would you try and engage only 7? Yeah.
So when you interact with the youth and their career aspirations, what are your reflections and how's that been like 3 decades or 2 decades from where you had started?
I think the positive is that the more I see people in college or just out of college, is I see far more awareness about themselves, awareness about what they want, awareness about what is available, and that's a great thing. Yeah, I see a lot of drive, and maybe because of awareness, you can find your areas of interest, and that keeps you excited. I mean, when I was growing up, there was only let's say, engineer or doctor. What if I wanted to be an artist? And that was a bad idea. And so I became an engineer. I may not have been happy with it. So today, people are able to find those avenues and be happy. What I find as something that would get into the way is two things. One is I see a lot of, if you like, desire to have things very quickly. Yeah, I want responsibility yesterday. I want to get promoted yesterday. I want this now. And that won't happen, because there is only that much that, speed that you can get into your learning curve. And the other is this entire sense of entitlement, that I'm not saying everyone has, but a lot of people have, that they are entitled to get this and entitled to get that. Yeah, you've got to earn that. Yeah, so it's great that you come in with more knowledge. It's great that you come in with more skills. It's great that you come in with more awareness. It's great that you come in with more excitement. But you need to also understand that there is a learning curve that you need to go through, and no one is entitled to anything. You need to earn that. I think that's what I would say.
I completely agree with you. Sir, I'm sure these workshops must be quite tiring. So just trying to understand that what do you do to unwind after these tiring workshops? Like, I recently got to know that you got pet dogs. So do you spend time with them? And what's your fitness
Sorry,
mantra?
I have pets. Yeah, I have pets, of course. Yeah, I spend time with them. No, I think the only thing about these workshops that is tiring is the physical tiredness, not the mental tiredness. When you do work that you love, I would want to do it again and again. The only thing is physical tiredness. For physical tiredness, you need to take breaks. You need to allow your body to get over the tiredness. I do yoga, which helps. I try and keep active. I take my dog for a walk as often as I can, and yeah, pets are probably the best rejuvenator in the world. And so yeah, I have two dogs, and they rejuvenate me every day, whether I'm doing workshops or not. But I think the bottom line is, when you do what you love, I don't think tiredness or anything comes in the way.
So final thoughts. What would be your piece of advice to a youngster who would be watching this show?
I think I've already said that, right? I don't want to repeat it. It's about knowing. I mean, what are the few things I covered? One is that find a job and a mentor, and not a company and a grade and a perk. Yeah. So yeah, don't go for glamour, but go for finding the right boss in the early stages of your career. If, of course, you might say, how do I find the right boss? How do I know the company I'm joining has the right boss? Yes, you don't know. Fine. See if you can find people who have worked in that company that you know. Are your seniors in that company? Can they tell you? And let's say you don't know, and you go and find the wrong boss. Quit. You don't have to stay in that job forever. And again, if you keep saying, oh, I've got into this big company, it's okay if I have a bad boss. Don't. Get into a company that people don't know. Doesn't matter. Get a good boss. So that would be the first piece of advice. The second is, use the fact that you have so much more enthusiasm, knowledge, etc. But don't think you're going to fast track beyond what is feasible and possible. There is a certain amount of time you need to spend to understand and learn. And lastly, you're not entitled to anything. Yeah, you need to earn it, like any of us have done. And when you put in that hard work and you put in it genuinely and humbly, you will earn it. And when you earn it, then yes, you'll be entitled.
Thank you so much for sparing time on this show, sir. I'm sure the viewers are going to love it. I'm leaving your LinkedIn description of your profile, as well as the link to Storyworks in the description and the pinned comment. I'm sure the people would want to connect with you for career mentorship and advice. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
sir.
and the last request I would have is put in a link for the Crossword Book Awards, and anyone who has read the book in your group, it'll be great if they have found the book useful to put in that vote at crosswordbookawards.com. So put in that link as well.
Sure.
And yes, thank you so much for having me here.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.